Marcus Webb had delivered 17 technical presentations in his career as a propulsion systems engineer, and not once had he deviated from his carefully prepared notes. Precision, clarity, and professionalism were the cornerstones of his reputation. That perfect record was about to shatter in the most spectacular way possible. The conference hall on Horizon's Gate Station was packed with representatives from a dozen different species, all gathered for the annual Interstellar Propulsion Symposium. Marcus stood at the podium, his presentation on quantum drive efficiency scrolling across the holographic display behind him. Everything was going perfectly until he noticed her in the third row. She was Cathari, a species Marcus had only encountered briefly before. The Cathari were renowned navigators, their natural ability to perceive gravitational fields making them invaluable for charting hyperspace routes. This particular Cathari woman had skin that seemed to shimmer with an internal luminescence, shifting from deep violet to soft lavender as she listened intently to his presentation. Her features were elegant and alien, with large eyes that held depths like nebulae, and her hair moved with a life of its own, floating around her head in defiance of the station's artificial gravity. Marcus tried to focus on his data, on the graphs and equations that he'd spent months perfecting, but his eyes kept drifting back to her, watching the way she leaned forward with interest, the graceful curve of her neck, the way her form-fitting navigation suit, the quantum manifold, creates what we call a propulsion envelope, Marcus heard himself saying, which generates thrust through a very attractive back-end architecture that really stands out in terms of efficiency and an overall aesthetic appeal. There was a moment of confused silence. Someone coughed. Marcus's brain caught up with his mouth, and he felt heat flooding his face as he realized what he'd just said. Worse, he'd been staring directly at the Cathari woman when he said it, and from the amused expressions on several faces in the audience, the implication was crystal clear. The woman's skin shifted to a bright coral color that Marcus didn't know how to interpret. Her hair began moving more rapidly, creating patterns that seemed almost like written language. She stood up, her movements fluid and purposeful, and Marcus felt his heart sink into his boots. This was it. He was about to get filed with a formal complaint, probably banned from future symposiums, and definitely fired from his position at the Human Engineering Collective. His career was over because he couldn't keep his thoughts to himself for 90 minutes. But instead of storming out or calling for security, the woman walked down the aisle with measured steps. The crowd parted, sensing that something unprecedented was about to occur. She climbed the small steps to the stage, and Marcus found himself frozen in place, unable to look away from her approaching form. Up close, she was even more striking. Patterns flowed across her skin like aurora borealis, and her eyes held a mixture of amusement and something else he couldn't quite identify. She was several inches taller than him, her presence commanding despite the gentle way she moved. "You are Marcus Webb," she said, her voice carrying a harmonic quality that made his name sound like music. "Human propulsion engineer, age 32, currently assigned to the innovation division of your species' primary research facility." Yes, Marcus managed, wondering how she knew all that and why she was using it against him. "Look, I'm deeply sorry for—" "I am Serena Vex," she interrupted smoothly. "Navigation specialist, age 47 in your years, currently mapping the Kelvorian expanse for safe passage routes." She tilted her head, studying him with those nebula eyes. "Tell me, Marcus Webb, do you make a habit of objectifying those who attend your lectures?" "No, never. I don't know what happened. Marcus struggled for words. "You're very distracting." A ripple of laughter went through the audience. Serena's skin shifted to a warm amber color, and her hair began forming more complex patterns. "Distracting," she repeated. "Because of my back-end architecture?" Marcus wanted the station's hull to breach and suck him into the cold vacuum of space. "I deserve that." I'm sorry. Truly. It was inappropriate and disrespectful, and I have no excuse. You're wrong, Serena said, stepping closer. You do have an excuse. The Ketheri release subtle pheromones that can affect other species' neurochemistry. It's a defense mechanism from our evolutionary past, but in enclosed spaces, it can make us seem compelling to others. Marcus blinked. So I was literally under the influence? Partially, Serena allowed. But that doesn't explain why you chose to vocalize your thoughts rather than simply experiencing them silently like the other 100 people in this room who are similarly affected. Other 100 people? Marcus glanced at the audience and noticed for the first time that many of them were watching Serena with the same fascinated attention he'd been giving her. The difference, Serena continued, her skin now showing swirls of silver and amber, is that you were honest about it. Clumsy, unprofessional, and completely tactless, but honest. She smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly more numerous than human standard. Among my people, such direct honesty is the foundation of our courtship rituals. Marcus's brain stuttered to a halt. Courtship? You've expressed interest in me, publicly and without pretense. According to Ketheri tradition, I'm now entitled to test whether that interest is genuine or merely superficial. She gestured to the audience. With all these witnesses, no less. Very traditional. I what? Serena laughed, the sound like wind chimes in a solar breeze. I'm invoking the trial of depths, Marcus Webb. You've noticed the surface. Now you'll have to prove you can handle what lies beneath. She extended her hand, her skin glowing with patterns that seemed to pulse with some internal rhythm. Do you accept? Marcus looked at her offered hand, then at the audience full of witnesses, then back at Serena's amused, challenging expression. Every rational part of his brain was screaming that this was insane, that he should apologize again and flee the stage. That getting involved in alien courtship rituals was a terrible idea. Instead, he found himself reaching out and taking her hand. Her skin was warm, and the moment they touched, he felt a subtle vibration, like standing near a powerful engine. I accept, he said. Surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded, the audience erupted in applause, and what sounded like several different species versions of excited chatter. Serena's skin blazed with brilliant patterns of gold and violet, her hair creating elaborate spirals around her head. Excellent, she said, her grip on his hand firm. The trial begins at sunset, station time. Meet me at the observation dome on level 37. Don't be late, Marcus Webb. I don't give second chances. She released his hand and walked off the stage with the same fluid grace, leaving Marcus standing alone at the podium, his presentation forgotten, his career probably in shambles, and his heart racing with a mixture of terror and anticipation. Someone in the audience shouted, "What about the quantum manifolds?" Marcus looked at his abandoned presentation, then at the door through which Serena had disappeared. The presentation is over, he announced. I have to go prepare for possibly the biggest mistake of my life. As he left the stage to another round of applause, Marcus realized that his slip of the tongue had just changed everything. He just hoped he could survive whatever Serena had planned for him. The observation dome on level 37 was a marvel of engineering, a transparent hemisphere that jutted from the station's hull, offering an unobstructed 360-degree view of the cosmos. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early, his palms sweating despite the station's climate control. He'd changed from his formal presentation, attire into something more casual, but still presentable. Dark pants and a fitted shirt that his brother Tomas had assured him made him look less like a nervous engineer and more like someone who might survive an alien dating ritual. Serena was already there, standing at the dome's center with her back to him, silhouetted against the sprawl of stars. Her navigation suit had been replaced by flowing garments that seemed to be made of liquid light, shifting colors with her movements. Her hair floated freely, creating patterns that mirrored the constellations beyond the dome. "You're early," she said without turning around. "Good. Punctuality suggests you take this seriously." "I'm terrified," Marcus admitted, approaching her slowly. "Does that count?" Serena turned to face him, and her skin was showing patterns he hadn't seen before. Deep blues shot through, with silver veins that pulsed like circuitry. "Fear is honest. I appreciate honest." She gestured to the space around them. "Do you know why I chose this location?" Marcus looked around the empty dome. "Because it's romantic? The stars, the isolation, the dramatic lighting?" "Because it eliminates distractions," Serena corrected, though her skin flickered with amusement. "In here, there's nowhere to hide, no audience to perform for, no professional personas to maintain. Just you, me, and the void." She moved closer, her movements creating subtle trails of light. "The trial of depths has 3 phases. The first is called unveiling. You've seen my surface. Now tell me what you think you see beneath it." Marcus swallowed hard. "Is this a test where there's a right answer?" "There's an honest answer," Serena said. "Whether it's right depends entirely on how well you've been paying attention." He thought back to the symposium, to the way she'd handled his mortifying slip with grace and unexpected playfulness. "I see someone who could have humiliated me in front of everyone, but chose not to. Someone who turned an embarrassing situation into something else. You're clever, and you have a sense of humor, but there's something careful about how you use them. Like you're used to being underestimated." Serena's skin rippled with darker blues, and her hair slowed its movement slightly. "Continue." "You knew exactly who I was when you approached the stage," Marcus said, confidence growing. "My age, my position, my assignment. You'd done research, which means you were paying attention to me before I ever noticed you. So this whole thing is not random. You chose to sit in my presentation for a reason." For the first time, Serena looked genuinely surprised. Her skin flashed bright white before settling into softer lavender tones. "I did," she admitted. "I've been following your work on quantum drive optimization for 8 months. Your papers are brilliant, but you bury the most innovative ideas in footnotes, as if you're afraid of being too bold." Marcus felt his face heating. "You read my papers?" "All 17 of them," Serena confirmed, "including the one your colleagues rejected because the mathematics seemed too aggressive. The one where you proposed using gravitational ripples as propulsion anchors." She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the subtle warmth radiating from her skin. "That paper was genius, Marcus. But you let them dismiss it without fighting back. How did you even find that?" Marcus demanded. "It was never published." "I'm a navigator," Serena said simply. "I find things that are hidden, including brilliant engineers who don't recognize their own worth." Her hair reached out, tendrils drifting toward him before pulling back. "That's what I see beneath your surface. Someone with extraordinary ideas who's been taught to make himself smaller. Someone who apologizes for taking up space." The accuracy of her assessment hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Is that what this trial is about? Making me confront my issues?" "Partially," Serena said, her skin shifting to warm amber. "But also making me confront mine. The second phase of the trial is called reflection. Now I must unveil myself to you." She turned back to the stars, her posture becoming less assured. "I told you I'm mapping the Calvorian expanse. What I didn't mention is that I've been doing it alone for 3 years. My people usually navigate in bonded pairs. It's safer, more efficient, and the tradition dates back thousands of years. But I refused partnership because every Ketheri navigator I met wanted to chart the safe routes, the profitable routes, the routes that would earn recognition and status. But you wanted to explore," Marcus said softly. "Understanding looming. I wanted to find the places no one else had seen, Serena confirmed. The dangerous passages, the uncharted regions, the spaces between spaces where gravity does strange and beautiful things. My family called it reckless. My former partner called it selfish. Her skin darkened deep indigo. They said I cared more about the void than about people. And maybe they were right, because I've been alone out there, finding wonders that no one else will ever see, because I have no one to share them with. Marcus moved to stand beside her, both of them facing the cosmos. Is that why you came to the symposium? Looking for someone who might understand? I came because your research suggests you see space the way I do, Serena said. Not as an obstacle to overcome or a resource to exploit, but as something magnificent in its own right. When you write about quantum manifolds, there's poetry buried in the mathematics. You feel the beauty of it, even if you don't say so explicitly. Because engineers aren't supposed to be poetic, Marcus said. We're supposed to be practical, which is exactly the kind of limiting belief that keeps both of us isolated, Serena replied. She turned to face him, her skin now showing complex patterns that seemed to tell a story he couldn't quite read. So here we are, two people who've been told they're too much or not enough, standing in a dome surrounded by infinity, trying to figure out if we're brave enough to be honest with each other. Marcus felt something shifting in his chest, a realization that this wasn't just about attraction or cultural rituals. What's the third phase of the trial? Integration, Serena said, where we discover if what we've unveiled and reflected can actually coexist. That's the hardest part. She extended both hands toward him. It requires touch. Among my people, skin contact allows a deeper form of communication. You'll feel what I feel, sense what I sense. It's single quotes intimate. More intimate than what most species would consider appropriate for a first meeting. Marcus looked at her offered hands, understanding the weight of what she was asking. And if our feelings don't integrate? If we're incompatible? Then we part as friends who shared one moment of profound honesty, Serena said. There's no shame in incompatibility. The universe doesn't demand that every star form a binary system. But you're hoping we do, Marcus said, reading the tentative hope in her swirling skin patterns. Form a binary system. I'm hoping, Serena admitted, that I haven't spent 8 months building up a fantasy about someone who only exists in research papers. Marcus reached out and took her hands. The moment their skin made contact, the world shifted. It wasn't like anything he'd experienced before, not sight or sound or any sense he had words for. It was like becoming aware an entirely new dimension of existence. He could feel Serena's presence not as something external, but as something that overlapped with his own consciousness. Her emotions washed through him, hope tangled with fear, loneliness running deeper than oceans, and beneath it all, a fierce joy in discovery that resonated with something in his own soul. But there was more. Through their connection, Marcus could sense the way Serena perceived the universe. She didn't just see the stars, she felt them, experienced the gravitational symphony they created, understood space as a living thing that breathed and moved and sang. It was overwhelming and beautiful and utterly alien, and yet somehow familiar, like remembering a dream he'd forgotten years ago. Oh, Marcus breathed, understanding flooding through him. This is how you navigate. You don't calculate routes, you feel them. And you, Serena's voice seemed to come from inside his head and outside it simultaneously, don't just design engines. You compose them. Every equation is a note in a song you're trying to teach machines to sing. They stood there, hands joined, consciousness intertwined, while around them the universe continued its eternal dance. Marcus felt tears on his face and realized he was crying, though he couldn't say if they were tears of joy or sorrow or simple overwhelming sensation. Integration, Serena whispered, and Marcus felt her word as a truth that settled into his bones. They fit. Not perfectly, There were rough edges and sharp corners where their differences scraped against each other. But they fit the way a comet fits its orbit, the way a moon fits its planet, held together by forces that were stronger than the vast emptiness trying to pull them apart. When they finally released their hands, Marcus staggered slightly, feeling the loss of that expanded awareness like a physical wound. Serena caught him, steadying him with a touch that was now just touch again, simple and mundane and impossibly precious because of what they'd just shared. "So," Marcus said when he trusted his voice to work, "did I pass your trial?" Serena's skin was blazing with colors he'd never seen before, patterns so complex and rapid they seemed like living artwork. "Marcus Webb," she said formally, "you have survived unveiling, reflection, and integration. By the traditions of my people, I declare you a worthy partner." Then her formality broke, and she smiled with genuine warmth. "You exceeded every expectation I had, even the ones I was afraid to admit I was holding." "I have no idea what happens now," Marcus admitted. "Human courtship is nothing like this. We usually just go to dinner and hope we don't bore each other." "Now," Serena said, her hair wrapping gently around his arm in what he was learning to recognize as an affectionate gesture, "we figure out how two very different people from two very different worlds build something together. Starting with dinner, if you'd like. I should warn you that Ketheri dietary requirements are unusual, but I've learned to appreciate human cuisine. I know a place on level 19 that serves food from 30 different planets," Marcus offered. "Fair warning, I tend to over-explain the science behind everything when I'm nervous. And I'm definitely nervous. I spend weeks alone in space talking to gravitational anomalies," Serena countered. "Your over-explaining sounds delightful." She paused, her expression becoming more serious. "Marcus, this is real for me. I don't engage in the trial of depths lightly. When Ketheri integrates successfully, we tend to form permanent bonds. I need you to understand what you're potentially walking into." Marcus thought about his careful, controlled life, his safe career choices, his reluctance to take risks, his tendency to hide his best ideas in footnotes. Then he thought about the feeling of Serena's consciousness touching his, the recognition of finding someone who understood the universe the same way he did, even if they perceived it through completely different senses. "I accidentally told a room full of people that you had a perfect ass," Marcus said. "Then I accepted a challenge to participate in an alien courtship ritual I knew nothing about. I'd say my careful life ended the moment I saw you." He squeezed her hand gently. "Besides, I've spent my whole career calculating risk versus reward. This is the best equation I've ever encountered." Serena laughed, the sound filling the dome like starlight made audible. "You're either very brave or very foolish. Can't it be both?" "With you," Serena said, leading him toward the dome's exit, her hand warm in his. "I suspect it will always be both. And I find I'm very much looking forward to discovering which." As they left the observation dome together, neither noticed the small figure watching from the shadows near the entrance. But they would soon learn that not everyone was pleased about a human engineer and a Ketheri navigator forming an unprecedented bond. Some connections threatened more than just personal comfort. They threatened entire political structures built on keeping species separate and predictable. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, Marcus and Serena had each other, a universe of possibilities, and a restaurant reservation they were both hoping they'd be too distracted to keep.